Hey guys, welcome to Drama Diving. We have a special guest. He is a repeat from previously, but some things have happened recently that he put out, and we wanted to get a chance to talk to him about it. It just worked out that it's our second one during the week. As always, we appreciate your guys' time, especially on a beautiful day, at least where it is by us, a beautiful day like today. So I would like to welcome Gareth Lock from The Human Diver and the most recent edition, If Only. So I'm going to bring Gareth in here. Hey, Gareth, how are we doing?
Good. Thanks very much, Jason. Good to see you this evening.
Yeah, nice to see you too. So how you been? How are things since we last checked in with you?
Pretty busy, both with Human Diver stuff and other work that I'm doing. I was insanely busy at the start of this week putting stuff together for the launch of If Only on Wednesday. I didn't finish the workbook until on the Tuesday night and sent that out to my students. So that was really good. And it's the classic bit that the activity fills the time available and some more. So that was really good. And the sort of feedback from the film has been fantastic. We've got about 8,000 views on Vimeo. And there's about 6,000 views on the Human Diver webpage as well. So it's gone well, and the wishes and the thoughts and everything that's come back has been really positive. So that was really what the goal was, is to create a learning environment, which we'll explore a bit further tonight.
Good. Yeah, it seems like you've kind of created a whole whirlwind for yourself with this thing hitting off, and then you've been on all sorts of shows since then and going through all the class that I'm in that I haven't been as active as I had hoped. But yeah, it seems like you've been pretty crazy since Wednesday.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely. And prepping for Monday night, which is the final night of this session as well. So, and it's a shame you're not there. But the good thing is that, with all of the classes that I run, they're all recorded materials and people get to keep them for good. So that's been good. And the engagement has been with the students on the classes I've been running has been really good as well. Just trying to influence people's thought process. I can't say I'm going to change them because you own that change process. But I can certainly give you plenty of stuff to think about. And I think that's been really good. And looking at things differently generally is that whole sort of the training process, is to look at incidents and accidents differently, to think about how we can prevent them by applying those same skills and knowledge that healthcare has started to adopt more. Aviation's been going for the last 50 years. The nuclear industry is sort of similar period as well. So it's trying to repackage it and reframe it and rephrase the stuff, translate it into diving language, so that people go, all right, actually this does apply to me. It's not just some airy fairy theory that people just go, no, that's not applicable to me because I don't make mistakes, or it's okay. I don't need to know about this stuff. And yet when we start telling these stories, people go, oh yeah, I've had one of those, and I've done that, and I wish I'd said that. So has been fantastic from that perspective. So
yeah, I've been having the conversation being at the hospital and talking about checklists and using them and all that. And people were like, well, so you telling me I need to do a checklist or something? I've been doing it in 20 years. And I was like, well, you kind of are. When we chart, you use a checklist. They're like, oh, I'm like, yeah. Have you ever gone to chart about the alarm and then gone back and plugged it in because you missed it? There's your checklist. It's just not in your hand while you're doing it. They're like, oh, I see. I'm like, yeah. So there's other ones we could make, isn't there? They're like, maybe there is. Like, yeah, okay.
I know.
That's fun.
And the problem is what happens is people think that checklists are the panacea. And so you end up with checklists.
Oh,
and it's just like, no, it's, and healthcare is terrible for that. So it's about designing those checklists for the operating and the social environment, that they should be memory prompts for skills that have been acquired. They shouldn't be about a compliance-based tool that says at the end of the shift or the end of the week, they bring in the checklists and count how many ticks are in the boxes. Right. Because what will happen then is people will just change their behaviors. They know what they're being rewarded for. They know what they're being punished for. So they'll just tick the boxes and they'll hand over the form. And there's no guarantee that the activity associated with that checklist has actually been carried out.
Right.
So I can, you're sort of nodding, going, yeah, been there. I know what that's like.
Yeah. It's got to be valuable, right? So it's got to be something that's worthwhile. So
definitely.
Before we get into If Only, we had mentioned kind of the classes that are going on.
Yeah, sure.
What's the class that you're finishing up? What's the class you're starting next week?
So I've got a 10-week webinar-based series. This one that Jason's on finishes on Monday. That's the 10th session, and that's really to wrap up all of the theory, and then get people to set some goals and own the improvement process. And I will follow up afterwards with some emails that basically says, for the next couple of months, 2-3 months, I'm going to send you little prompting emails to say, those goals that you said you were going to do, how are you getting on? And little snippets of information to help you. Yep. And then the next class starts on the 1st of June. And that's 7:00 in the evening UK time. But again, the programs are recorded. It's great if you can be there. We've got about 20 slots left. There's 30 slots already gone. So that's, cap it at that, because I know that not everybody can make the sessions. Uh-huh. And then we have each of the evening sessions or day, depending on where you are, is about 60 minutes of theory and discussion and about 30 minutes of interaction and Q&A. And that's changed as I've evolved the program. Instead of being all of the engagement at the end, it's actually spaced out. So we keep the topics on target, and it's about you as the students owning this. So I'm going to paste the link for that into the chat. In fact, I can't. So what I'll do, I can send it to you, and then you can paste it. There we go.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, I mean, I've enjoyed it. I mean, like I said, we had talked previously before we got started. I got so busy on Mondays working at the hospital that my all intentions were to be there every single week, and I'm really glad they're recorded because I ended up missing a lot because of what was going on. So it is what it is.
And so there's, that's 10. Well, it's about 15 hours of commitment, and then there's some homework between the sessions to consolidate. And people think, it's a lot of effort. There is still the micro class, which I know people can get something through you, Jason, for that. So
absolutely,
you can send some people, rather than put that on the Facebook link, put that through, or I can come up with a session for you.
Yeah, that's and we're starting to have all those conversations. We're starting to get the tech students asking about doing tech, and it's pretty much required. We're trying to figure out how to mandate it because it's some of them have the book already and have read the book, and we have nice long conversations. Some people are like, I kind of read the blog, but I'm a little clueless here, and some doing the micro class, and it's like, okay, I gotta streamline this somehow and figure out how we're gonna do it. So some people did it years ago, and now they're coming back going, oh yeah, I forgot about that, which is all good. But
go and refresh it, because again, they get to keep access to it as well. So
and
I think go.
We use the debrief for like everything. So my scientific divers use debrief, and it's just we use it for our professional training and for when we teach classes every single night, we debrief off of them. So same thing.
Great to hear. That's it. It's all about learning.
Yeah, exactly. So let's see here.
Which brings us nicely onto this.
Yes. So Chris says hello. I want to give him a little shout out. Lisa says hello.
Hi, Lisa.
Both some locals. Everybody's everybody's starting to show up. Yeah, Matt Glass is here. Now all the Yahoos are starting to show up. I see what we got going on here.
That's a big one.
So coming
does that mean that I need to get a little shot glass and a bottle of whiskey then?
You probably do. Yeah, Matt showing
I'll
up.
go and do that now.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll keep talking while I'll go and get a glass, so I can talk with a headphone. There we go. Back on the table. Back in a sec.
Here, Matt, I'll grab this one. I can only have I can only have a wee dram because I got to do stuff later on, but wee dram.
So there we go. It's some Dalwhinnie, 15-year-old. So
very nice.
There we go. Excellent. Right.
All right. So cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. So If only. We've been talking a lot about incidences. I know, well, it's coming up a lot in a lot of different areas. I know Great Time Podcast has been 2 weeks of incident reports and stuff like that and going through stuff. So let's talk about how If Only came about. And we'll start there at the very beginning.
Yeah. So I can't remember whether I covered it on my own when I was here the last time. And the reason why I'll go on this is because it framed my interest in this sort of the safety process. So I certified in 99 in Greece while I was on holiday, and my final certifying dive on open water, I finished the dive, filling in my logbook, and the instructor said, "No, you can't write 24 meters. You're only allowed to go to 18 meters because that's what we're allowed to do on the class." And I'm like, "But we dived to 24." Yeah, well, we did that because there wasn't anything to see at 18 meters, so we took it down to 24. Okay, fine. So didn't know any better. 4-5 years later, I go to South Africa with work, and we go to a dive center in Gansbaai, which is near Cape Town, but an hour or so out of Cape Town. And they sort of checked our cards, and that was it really, and no real sort of check of equipment. We jumped in, swam around in sort of 10-15 meters of water, and it was like, oh, this is really cool, clueless about what I was doing. A month later, I go to San Diego, and on the Saturday, so I'm still open water, and this would be my sixth, 6th, 7th, and 8th dives. I end up on out, I think it's Catalina Island, with a dive master, a guide, which showing me around was fantastic. On the Sunday, there were no open water dives available. So we ended up, I managed to persuade the dive shop owner to, I ended up having to sign extra waiver forms, but we ended up going out to the Yukon, and I think the Ruby E were the two wrecks out on Wreck Alley. Both 100-foot dives. I'm still an open water diver, limited to 60 feet. And so it's like, I don't know any different. And as I went down the shot line, I got no buoyancy control in my BCD. I was trying to squirt gas in, and there's nothing going in. I'm like, this isn't quite right. But I'm aware that the bottom it's a hard deck at about 110, 120 feet. So it's not a major issue. So I hit the sand and we sort stuff out and realized that the low pressure inflator hose, the collar had popped off the nipple slightly, and it looked like it was on, and there was a little bit of gas, but actually it wasn't there. So we sorted things out, and I ascended, and we did another 100-foot dive that day as well. And completely oblivious to the risks that I was taking at the time. And I got back to the UK, wanted to get more into diving, and I fell in with the wrong crowd, the GUE crowd in the UK. And since then, so since 2006 is when I did my fundamentals, and then Tech 1 and then Tech 2. Successive years, and I was diving most weekends at that stage as well. So at that sort of time is when I got interested in aviation and I was going through a master's degree where we had some human factors work, and recognized that we need to be doing more in terms of effective incident investigation, applying human factors knowledge to the training programs we do to better understand the failures. And generally, it didn't go down well, the work that I was doing, because it highlights failures further back up the system. One of the key things that comes out that I've seen in the diving incident reports is this bit, as Petar de Noble describes, the proximal cause. It's that bit that happens in the 5 minutes, 10 minutes, maybe an hour prior to the dive, or the fatality. That's what people jump up and down on and go, and this is the reason why it happened. And consistently getting frustrated with this. And that's why I put the sort of programs together. Now, in May 2018, when Brian died, the reports were up, and then Ashley put up a fantastic open report, and it's still available on the Scuba Accidents Risk Management Tools Facebook group, which was the public released report from Ashley and from DiveSoft to talk about what happened on that dive and why Brian ended up diving. And I read this and I thought, wow, this is the first time that I have seen somebody involved that has shared everything that's gone on and the mistakes that were made. And it was just like, okay, this is probably somebody who's very open to learning for this. And I left it for probably 6 months or so. And then I made a contact through a mutual friend of ours. And I said, look, this is who I am. This is what I do. I'd like you to look at a film called Just a Routine Operation, which was, it's about an 8 or 9 minute clip by a guy called Martin Bromley. And it's probably about 10 years old now, in which he was an airline pilot. He still is. And his wife was taken to hospital for a routine operation. And she was going to have the general anesthetic. So they put her under, and then they couldn't intubate her and they couldn't ventilate her. And at one point, there were 3 anesthetists or anesthesiologists, I think is what you call them across your side of the pond.
Yeah.
And they're trying to intubate her. They're trying to get, some way of getting breathable gas into her lungs, and her throat had collapsed, so they couldn't get this happening. And this went on for quite a few minutes. And in the meantime, there are nurses coming in and going, do you need a help? Because this doesn't look like it's going well. We can prep an ICU bed. No, it's okay. We've got it under control. And they went, okay, fine. And they canceled the beds that they'd got, the bed set up for this. And after something like 20 minutes of not having a breathable gas going in, and her blood saturation levels were really low, they all went, well, what we should do is just get her out, put her in recovery, and we'll wake her up. And they couldn't wake her up. And in 3 days afterwards, Martin gave the permission to switch the life support machine off because she just suffered massive brain damage. And so in the sort of period after that, he went to the hospital staff and said, so I presume there's going to be an investigation so that we can learn from this and prevent something happening again. No, it's just one of those things. Well, it's not just one of those things. My background is aviation. If something goes wrong, even a minor event, we look at these things from a technical perspective. We look at it from a social perspective. We look at it from a human factors perspective so that we can understand how it made sense for those people to do what they did. And so I sent this link off to Ashley, and then it went quiet for a bit. And I know that she was having, some real struggles with 3 small children and being widowed. And then in probably about the March, April time, maybe May, that sort of, the first quarter of last year, made contact again and said, have you had any more thoughts about this? And she said, yes, I want to do something about it. And I said, okay, this is what I would like to do in terms of run a documentary, put a documentary together with you and the dive team, and we'll interview, we'll tell a story, we'll tell a context-rich story that starts from Brian's, basically from where he started interested in diving and how he got interested in that, how the team came together, how the course was put together, and everything that happened right up until the point that he jumped off the boat. And we met. So it took us about a month or so to sort out a date that we could have, because somebody was still serving. Tim's still serving. John is still serving as well, but Tim was in Hawaii. John is in DC. Ashley is in Washington State, and Barbara was down in Cuba. So, and I'm in the UK, and JP Bresser, who was the videographer that I approached and said, look, can we put this together? He's based in the Netherlands. So it's like, right, let's stick a date in the diary in November. And we locked the dates in, we got the flights booked. And then we started putting the script together. And that was really interesting. My idea of how it was going to work, that whole thing that, what is it? Plans are useless, planning is essential. So I come up with this, and this is what it's going to look like. And, went through it all and said, yeah, okay, I reckon we do this. And, I put some ideas together. and I wrote out what I was going to do because I wanted to script what I was going to say, and then stitch that in and out of the face to camera work. And we sat down. So I flew out there on the Thursday, the 18th of November, somewhere around there anyway, the third week in November. And we met some of the people on the Friday. And then on the Saturday, we got everybody from the dive team and Ashley and a couple of friends in to talk through the day. In fact, the day and everything that happened before. And then basically it was going to be a case of storyboarding how stuff happened so that we've got an idea of what was going to happen next over the next few days, and what we were expecting people to talk about. And that was the first time that the team had come together since the accident, so 18 months before. So there was understandably a lot of emotion, and a lot of tears, including mine, where you just sit there and going, holy shit, this is just brutal. And just such a powerful thing, and trying to write notes and work out how to do things. So by the end of the Saturday, we got an idea of what the next 3 days were going to look like, because I was flying home on the Thursday morning. So I was, in fact, on the Wednesday night. So I was only out there for 5-6 days. So the Sunday we set up and did face to camera interviews with the 3 dive team members. And then on the Sunday, so that was the Sunday. And then on the Monday, we did a reenactment dive, recreated the situation. And we were really lucky to have a local guy who was diving at the same rebreather to basically stand in as Brian. So we created the scenes that were going on there as best we could. It was a different boat to the one that they used in 2018. And so we set that up, and then we went off and did a memorial dive as well. And Ashley had created a living memorial with Brian's ashes, which is near to the where Brian died. So we went and did a dive, and we came back and we paid our respects at the memorial, and then we came back in. And then the Tuesday we did a bit more face to camera work, and we did some environmental work as well, and the same thing on the Wednesday. And then I flew home that night, and then we ended up with a shed load of video and a shed load of stills. And then I spent probably about 2 or 3 days taking all of that in low res. I converted it into low res format.
Yeah.
Because these were all, I think, 4K shots that JP had done. And it was like, oh my God, this is just a nightmare. So put it all into low res, and then spent all that time listening to all of the shots, loading them into, I used Camtasia to edit the footage, and then basically sliced stuff up, and then sent this stuff over to JP and said, here you go, mate. There's about 60 or 70 pieces that you're going to have to stitch together. And he's like, what? I went, you're the professional, make it happen. So there were some bits that I had to reshoot because the sound didn't work. And that's where there's some shots where there's sort of sunlit area, which was shot in Minneapolis earlier this year, actually, just before the lockdown. So I was working with a paramedic team, a helimed team, an airline, sorry, a flight, what do you call them? Lifeline team. So reshot some of the stuff there. And then we had a team viewing at the end of April. And that was the first cut. And we basically got a session like this together. We played the video and then got together afterwards and then talked about how we could make it better. And then had some sort of test screenings with people. And it was, some of the comments that came back said, really good. It's a bit long. It's 34 minutes. Can you cut it down to about 25? And it's like, okay, what do I cut out? I don't know. all right then. So that was really, really good. And so, yeah, it went live on Wednesday night. So it's been fantastic, the response, and just the courage of the team, of Ashley and the team, to talk about such a traumatic event. And I think that's one of the bits that people who I've spoken to who've been involved in fatalities, the trauma that is left behind, this often said bit that, well, it's my choice, it's my life, I can do what I like. If I die doing what I love doing, well, it's only me that loses. And you sit there and go, you selfish sod. There are so many other people impacted. There is your family, there are your friends, there are the people that are on the boat or the shore dive or the cave that have got to come and rescue you or recover you from that situation. And I know in your daytime job, you know, there's trauma that's involved in dealing with some brutal situations that just doesn't go away. And I don't know, do you get access to PTSD type?
So essentially that's one of the things that it's a little bit different. So we have complete access. If we need help, we've got help, but you go to work every day with the people who are experiencing the same thing. So you get to sit down and chat and debrief with each other. Like, boy, that was hard. I can't believe what we went through last week. Or you talk to them afterwards, or you go out and have a pint and you just discuss, you know, quietly with not violating the HIPAA or anything like that. But you just are like, I don't know, what could we have done differently? But with the diving type stuff, and I think this is so unique that Ashley did what she did and releasing all the dive soft stuff and everything. It's just like, we don't get that in the dive industry. People experience something, either a near miss or a fatality or something along those lines. And they never actually get to debrief unless they have someone to have confidence in and they talk. Yeah. And we don't have a system for that PTSD. And you see instructors that just disappear for a while, or they just don't want to talk about it under multiple things. Like, hey, I can't talk about this because it hasn't been 7 years and they still could sue me. Like, yeah, but I can see your behavior's changed, so it's affecting you. Do you want to talk about it? No, I can't. Like, all right. But what Ashley did is just completely amazing that we could get all this out of this. Yeah.
And it's good. And, you know, the one of the comments that I just read this evening is, you know, to be able to tell a story that is so heartbreaking on one side and so enlightening and revealing on the other, was really my ultimate goal. Is this bit that says, you know, accidents are not just that proximal cause, that last 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or whatever it is, that they are subject of a number of factors that come together, and this thing called emergence, that you create something new that you weren't expecting to happen. And the difficulty with emergence or convergence is that you could have almost a 95% solution previously, and you wouldn't have got the same outcome. And that's one of the bits of pick up in the film, is that, you know, 2 weeks beforehand, Brian had made almost exactly the same mistake and entered the water with the unit still in surface mode. And I don't know, I hadn't gone back through the logs to find out the reasons why that was the case. But in this case, his oxygen cylinder was turned on. And so when he descended to 1.5 meters, the sort of the fail safely system kicks in and switches it over to dive mode, and then provides more oxygen than that he needs. So it could almost have been exactly the same situation 2 weeks prior. And this is the other downside of fatalities. And whilst Ashley has released this information, it's fantastic. You can't ask Brian how it made sense. And this is this huge push that I'm trying to get is, and I totally get the challenges in doing so. But if we can talk about the near misses, we can try to explore that local rationality. How did it make sense to that person at the time? What was going through their mind? What sort of pressures were they under? What sort of training had they had? What had they been taught in the past? I ran a session a little while ago, a couple of weeks ago, and I said to the guy, you know, they had a problem doing some bailout drills from depth, and one of them had a rapid ascent from about 200 feet. And I said, when was the last time you did a live bailout ascent? I went, Probably the last time we did our course. And how long was that ago? About 18 months, 2 years ago. And you sit there going, and I know why people don't do that. It's because it trashes a dive. It costs you money because now you've got to fill up your open circuit bailout cylinders. And they may not be in test. So you've got to go and get them retested before you can go and get them refilled. The cylinders stay there. They're not leaking gas anywhere. So why do I need to practice this? And it's this bit that says, okay, when you bail out for real, it's probably because the proverbials hit the fan and your brain is working really, really hard to work out what is going on. And if you can't remember the sequence of actions about what you need to do, like making sure that you close the loop and you don't flood the loopers accordingly, and making sure that the gases are all of the stuff that you do on a training course to prove, to demonstrate that you've got the skills, they're like any other skills, they fade. So it's understanding that process, and I forgot where I was going now with that conversation now. Just that ability to tell the story with everything that's going on, and which is why fatalities are not a particularly great way of learning. Because we don't normally get the raft of information we've got in this case, but also because we can't have the conversations with those people. And the double-edged sword, and it's on a thing that I've put recently, that social media is a great tool that allows us to share information really quickly, but it is also a really bad tool because it allows people without knowledge of what really happened to throw metaphorical rocks at people for being stupid, and yet they will have made the same cognitive errors, like a slip, a lapse, mistake, or a violation, which are just things that we do lots of the time on the surface, or not related to diving, but we don't think we make those same mistakes when we go diving or when we're on a dive. And why would that be the case? Our brain's wired the same way. It doesn't matter how experienced you are. All the experience does is it reduces the likelihood that you're going to make a skill-based mistake or maybe a knowledge-based mistake. But if you're distracted or you've met a novel environment before, you've probably got the same level of problem-solving skills as a novice does. So it's about that ability to tell stories so that everybody else can learn. My dog barking, so.
Oh, it's fine. Near misses are so important when it comes to the whole grand scheme of everything. That near misses are going to save. Near miss reporting saves lives. It just is. It's just how that works. There's a comment here that I actually disagree with. I think you are awesome, Ashley, because you have actually made this whole thing happen. The only reason we can have this conversation is because you shared what you did. So I disagree, and I say that you are awesome. I don't know whether Gareth agrees or not, but that's my take.
Well, we've had conversations before, Ashley, and we've already talked about this, that, the sort of the bravery that's involved to be able to do this is fantastic. I got described as being an enigma the other day, and I would say that you are too. So thank you, Ashley.
Nice. She says she'll accept that. But yes, Ashley, thank you so much. So going into, looking at it from the surface, it was turned into surface mode and oxygen was off, which were the two, big things. But so much leads up to that, which is all near miss type of stuff. If anybody's familiar,
I can work backwards, because it's one I did with Chantel on Thursday night with the Diamedic one was, this bit that people focus on, the oxygen cylinder wasn't turned on. It's like, yeah, okay, fine. That's one thing. Right. And the rebreather was in surface mode, but there is a fail-safe mechanism that allows you to go dive mode and ups the PO2. And then you sit there and go, okay, so in looking at the logs, he'd started his checklist, the handset-driven checklist, at around 7:12, and it shut itself off at about 7:25. And whether or not that was manually shut off or whether or not it timed out, it's not clear from the system log whether or not that's the case. And because there's no high-pressure feed sensor, you can't say when the oxygen cylinder was isolated as well. But Brian had been taught to isolate his oxygen on his rebreather by his instructor. And people go, well, why would you do that? So, well, there's a couple of reasons. One, you have constant mass flow rebreathers, which constantly trickle oxygen into the loop. So you want to isolate that. And the other one is, and I know somebody who's fallen foul of this from a diluent cylinder, was that they prep their gear, they put it on the boat, and then they ratchet strap the rebreather down because they were going off. And you can see what's going to happen next is the MAV, the manual add that's on the counter lung, gets pressurized, and on the 2-hour transit out to the dive site, the MAV's being pressed in. The overpressure valve is doing what it's supposed to do, which is to let gas out. So he put the rebreather on, and he thought it's a bit odd that the lungs are quite full, which I wasn't expecting. Didn't check the gas because he's already done, his sort of prep stuff beforehand. He's got full cylinders, and he's going down the shot line, and he gets to about sort of 50 feet, and it's like, oh, the diluent's empty. Right, bail out and go back up again. So I can see why that can be a reason to do. So the oxygen was turned off. So at 7:25, the handset turns itself off. And when you turn it back on again, it defaults back into surface mode. And so, the way that your memory works is you sit there and go, well, I configured it 10 or 15 minutes ago. It's going to be in the same state. Why would it be any different than what it was before? So put it on. And now you've got the sort of head-up display system, and you've also got handset buzzers, and there's also a buddy light on this particular rebreather. And because it's in surface mode, it's not tracking the PO2 within the loop because it's not required to do that. But the LEDs are working. And in the workbook that I put together, which is available on the link that's further back up, I got a rebreather instructor on this unit to take photos of what the head-up display looks like in broad daylight, in bright sunlight. And these were screen grabs from a video, and it only came out because as he approached the rebreather, I could only just see the LEDs blinking to show that it was a low PO2 situation. And it wasn't until he moved his hand and created a shadow could you actually see the red LEDs flashing. So from a design point of view, you're in a situation that says we can't have the LEDs so bright in the water because now they're going to be blinding because it's dark, especially when you go cave diving. But at the same time, you need them to be bright enough that you can see them on the surface or while you're bobbing on the surface and also getting prepared. So that's so the unit was doing what it was supposed to do. So then we go back. Okay, so why was he distracted? Well, it was a warm day. He was the only one, I think, in the team wearing a dry suit. It was a hot day. So, putting that on when they first got in the boat, and now you start to overheat. You've got these sort of self-induced pressures that says, look, I'm getting warm. I've got to get off the boat and cool down. So you're in this situation, right? I'm going to get that done. He's also distracted with a camera, which, was allowed. There's nothing forbidding cameras for students. And actually I think there's only about 2 or 3 of the agencies, because I did some sort of ringing around and finding out, do agencies prohibit students from taking cameras on classes? And the majority of agencies don't have anything in their standards that say you can't take a camera. So, there's no violation there, but it's not good practice, because if you're going to be a student on especially a rebreather class, you want to be paying attention to what's going on. But there were also pressures that, not necessarily explicit that had to happen on that dive, but to collect media for the shop that he was working through, which is also the instructor was, that same shop. So there is a want to do something there as well. So there's distractions that prevented him from seeing the warning lights that were going on. So that's in the sort of the 45, 50 minutes prior to the dive itself. And then the discussion that happened with Ashley 2 nights before, and this is what was the really interesting thing while we were doing the filming is that people forget dates and days, or they remember dates, but not necessarily days, because they don't have a significance. And so we're having these sort of discussions and saying, when did certain things happen? So there's the discussion between the sea state, Eric, I think it was pretty calm. There was a current running, but I think it was pretty flat. So, a couple of nights before, the discussion with Ashley after Brian had come home from the dive shop, where they were supposed to get everything sorted, and the plan changed again and again. And Brian said, look, actually, I'm just going to knock this on the head. I'm not going to carry on with this course. And Ashley, the description and discussion that's in the film of saying, no, just make it happen. It's only one more dive. We can resolve the situation. After that, we can work out what we're going to do next. All the frustrations and that were going on at that stage. It's only one more dive, and that's all you need to do. So there would have been self-induced pressures to get that dive done and complete that dive, so that then everything, a line was drawn under it. And then we go back on the Tuesday, where they were working with the initial instructor for the class, and that instructor had said, you haven't got enough hours to complete the next level in this training program. And their training program was a sort of, whilst it was made up of recognized agency modules, it was a long 22-week, that was what it was originally planned as, multiple classes that were bolted together under the umbrella of a big program. So on the Tuesday prior to the dive on the 20th, that instructor turned around and said, you haven't got enough hours. I'm not going to teach you the class. And the shop owner said, well, I'll teach it. And that then sort of carried through. So, and at that stage as well, it was a new environment for one of the team members, because they'd never dived with this instructor before. So trying to build those dynamics, and a number of sessions I've done recently about instructors are leaders. You may not realize it, but you have a team of students who are your followers. You are the leader and they are your followers. And you will have an influence over them, both in the training environment, outside the training environment. And if you don't walk the talk outside of the training environment, they will pick up on that and go, aha, you do that. You're cutting the corners. That means that you trained me, you're cutting the corners, and I can cut those corners too.
Yep.
And so that sort of influence happens. So the bit that I've been talking with instructors about becoming better leaders is understanding team dynamics. When you are coming together as an initial team, you need to be more autocratic, and you need to be more directive and give people the sort of confidence about what needs to be done. But as the team evolves, what your ultimate goal should be is that by the time you get to the end of the class, and if it's a team that's come together, or if it's a, I'm biased, I'm a GUE graduate from classes, the team is really strong there, and we're normally going to classes together, so that by the end of the class, you're able to operate as almost a self-sufficient class on your own. And so your experience dives should be almost hands-off by the instructor, and you get the students to brief their dive, plan it, brief it, execute it, and then debrief it, so that we teach people how to do the plan, brief, execute, and debrief as a team. We shouldn't be surprised that people don't debrief dives if we haven't taught them how to debrief. And that debriefing really allows the learning to happen.
Yeah.
So that's the Tuesday. There's a lot of frustrations because we keep on changing the plan. The gas changes were on the Thursday, when they realized they hadn't got enough gas to do all of the cylinders that they'd originally planned. So on the Friday, there was a whole bunch of replanning as well. And then all of the stuff prior to that, where they were trying to reschedule this class so many times, but because they're all serving forces members, trying to get everybody to come together at the same time to do the class became really difficult, and frustrations were high at that stage as well. So there was a point that Erica put, additional task loading, mental states, definitely. If you're not in a good place and you're thinking about a whole bunch of other things, then you're not likely to be concentrating on the activity. And I can think of an example that involved nearly crashing twice. I was in a staff officer job in the Royal Air Force. We were supposed to release a software program at the end of this week or the week. On the Monday, I went down to the software vendor to get the final, this is what we're going to do, and we were going to start doing our training at the end of the week. And the guys went, nah, it's not ready. It's not going to be ready for probably another 4 to 6 weeks. And I was an Air Force captain, the equivalent of, and I got my full colonel, in fact, my 1-star, had said, right, this is going to happen, and there's a lot of money committed to this. And I was driving back from this software vendor and I nearly crashed twice because I was thinking, how the hell do I tell this 1-star that we now delayed our program and all of this knock-on effect? And there's me as this lowly captain going, shit, it's all gonna go. Yeah. And I say twice, I nearly ran into the back of other cars at junctions because I wasn't paying attention. And you sit there going, really? And I got in the following morning and I spoke and he went, yeah, okay, fine. It's a delay. And I'm like, so all the worry that I had was completely baseless, but that didn't stop my own mental state being in the wrong place. And I think people forget how much our brains just shortcut when we're in that state. So expecting people to be logical when they're under significant stress is hugely flawed. Yeah. And that's really the responsibility then of the instructor, the leader, to manage that cultural, psychological environment, social environment, to say, right, we can thumb this dive at any time. It does not matter. If we're not in the right place, we'll knock it on the head. And I, as the instructor, will sort out all of the other paperwork and everything else that goes on from that perspective. But it becomes, that's what the leader's job should be, is to protect the followers from the environment they're going on. And that is, an instructor's role, to make sure that the students' heads are in the right place before you go diving, because they're going to be stressed enough passing the class or trying to pass the class, let alone everything else that's going on.
Yeah, you have so many external pressures on so many different levels, and trying to figure out, like in the medical field, using a timeout to make sure that everything's correct, or closed loop communication. Sometimes you get the feedback from somebody and you realize that maybe we need to take a look at this differently. So, and that foundations course that I wrote, we teach the debrief completely from day one, and they're expected to run it by themselves by the end, and we participate, but the students are expected to do that. So, I want to talk about, let me throw it up here really quick. Add to stream. We're small, but this is it's just the cover of the If Only workbook. So we'll get back into the story, but I want to make sure we throw this in there because you had mentioned it while you were talking. This is not a work, I don't know if it's different for you guys in the UK, but we hear workbook in the US and we think that there's a bunch of questions and like little lines that you write on, and then you get nothing out of it. Like that's how we watch like videos in high school and stuff. Like, oh, I've got my movie workbook. This is great. Like, it's just questions that I have to write down what happened in the movie. And to be in all honesty, that's what I thought when you sent it. And I was like, oh boy, okay. I'll take a look at it. I had missed the email first, but then I downloaded it and looked at it and I was like, my God, this is actually like really, really good. It's very different from that. Can you kind of explain what the workbook is that you made? Because I think it's invaluable for
maybe
watching
maybe I should retitle it as something like a field guide.
Yes.
Or a facilitator's guide or something like that. So
because it has instructional stuff, information, and like student-based stuff, so it's completely different than what people are going to think it is.
Yeah. So the goal of this was there is so much stuff that even when we were putting the video together, one of the challenges was, how do you bring the learning points out? Because there are so many of them there. And in fact, in the about 18 minutes of narrative of the face to camera of Ashley and the team, I picked out about 53 contributory and causal factors that are there. And there's no way that we could put that into a way in a film without distracting people, which is why there are captions that bring some of this to life. And I thank the sort of review team for saying, these are little things that we can pull out. And it was great to put those in so that people are aware as they watch the film. But the goal of the workbook was that this film in itself is a learning experience. But the difficulty with anything like this is, what do you do with it? You've watched this film and you go, wow, there's a whole bunch of learning there. And then you go, what's the learning that I can take out of this, especially if I'm an instructor? Because a lot of the big topics, like make sure you use checklists, don't rush, use proper communication, have great questioning technique, they're already taught. So why are these things failing? So the idea of the workbook was to provide an overview of what happened on the dive and leading up to it, to provide the causal and contributory factors that I was talking about, to provide a little bit more insight into the rebreather aspects of this in terms of the head-up display, the buddy light, the logs, the dive logs, and then to provide facilitators questions so that you as an instructor or a dive center manager or a dive safety supervisor, a dive safety officer, you can sit down with your dive team and you can say, right, here's a summary narrative, and it's a really simplistic narrative, and it's the sort of thing that you would hear in or read in a I'm just going to pull it up now and read it out in an accident, a typical accident report. And that, you know, the narrative that's given to the facilitators readout is, Diver X was on a closed circuit rebreather training diver training course. They were with an instructor and 3 other divers on a boat, and they were planning to dive on a wreck in approximately 35, 40 meters, 115, 135 feet of water. They're using a gas mix which had breathable trimix on the surface. Diver X entered the water without their oxygen cylinder turned on. They went hypoxic shortly afterwards, passed out and sank. They were recovered from the bottom but died despite CPR being carried out. And that's the sort of thing that you would normally read somewhere. And what I asked then, you know, the facilitators, or give them the information and the skills, that the guidance really is, okay, let's do a what if. You know, what happened? Let's do a counterfactual. What do you think happened? What should have happened? What could have happened? What would you have done? And write all of those things on a whiteboard so that you get the audience to think about what are the things that are there. And then, you know, ask the question, so is someone to blame? Because that's always the first bit, you know, whose fault was it? And then you go, right, if so, whose was it? And then play the video and play the first sort of 25 minutes of the video, which then ends with the last of the sort of the team narratives and Ashley summing up what had happened and the reasons behind it. And then the facilitator says, okay, now you've got a very different story. What do you think the reasons that the accident happened now are? And write those on the board in a different color. And then once they've done that, explore some of those and why they think that's the case. And then play the remaining sort of 8 minutes, 9 minutes of the film, which is where I end up providing a narrative to explain what's happened and the human factors perspective. And then go back and say, okay, for a third time, what do you think the reasons that the accident happened? So that's a sort of a 60 to 90 minute workshop, which people can run themselves, because all the information they need to run this workshop is in the film and it's in the workbook that I've produced. And then the latter half of the document is for some more theory, which looks at just culture and psychological safety and situation awareness and decision-making, teamwork and leadership, and provides facilitator questions for again, to expand the workshop. So if you're inclined and you've got a grasp of these knowledge and, you know, all of the information's in this workbook for you, you can run a 3 or a 4 hour workshop that uses this film as a learning experience. And that was really the goal for this, is to say, how can we learn more than just watching a film, albeit powerful and emotive and informative, but actually it's about getting people to think in a reflective manner and almost ask the questions, so how close were you and with something similar, or have you encountered situations where you're unable to speak up, or you wished you'd been at Thumb a Dive but you couldn't, and explore those bits. So thank you for the feedback, Jason. That's something that I will do. I will change it to a field guide. No, it's great. I mean, I didn't know that.
That's exactly, like, when I first looked at it, I'm like, really, $10 for the okay, I'm going to answer some questions like, oh, reflect on how you felt when, like, those are the normal workbooks we see, and going through, and I mean, timestamps for every single portion. I'm flipping through it now, but like timestamps through the show or through the entire documentary, and saying, okay, these are the different things that you know, organizational factors, supervisory failures, and going to the Swiss cheese model and all of that. But going through all those different things is invaluable, and it really changes kind of how you see the video and the feedback you're getting from it. And then, like you said, the using it as a seminar prior to technical or rebreather training is an amazing tool in general.
Yeah, just seen that from Brock. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. So Brock just grabbed it. It is. I posted the link up here. I mean, like I said, I initially, I'm as skeptical as everybody else. Like, all right, $10 for a workbook, you got to be kidding me. And then looking at it, I go, yeah, it's worth at least $10. Like, that is definitely priced accordingly.
And language becomes so important. So thank you for bringing that up and feedback. So thank you, Jason. I will change
pleasure. That. So what should people do going from here with all this? I mean, there's so much in there, and there's not going to be time. I mean, like you said, we could spend 3 or 4 hours on here and going through every single little piece of it. And I enjoy spending time with you always, but what should people do going from here with the information besides just the workbook?
So the bit that I get asked this, right, you've given us some information, what do we do with it? And I think there are two. I'll start with 2 key things, really. One is, try not to be judgmental when you see something going wrong. And I know that is hard, and we are hardwired to jump to the shortcut conclusions. We look for simple answers, and accidents are anything but. And if you want to grab the latest blog, actually, Jason, the outcomes are sexy and attractive. Brock, don't forget the debrief. So that'll be 3 things. The other thing is that ability to tell a context-rich story from a near miss. Fatalities are that they provide learning as long as the information is available, and often it's not. So serious injuries provide information, but they're probably going to be subject to some sort of litigation. So the ability to find out what's going on there is pretty slim. So let's look at the medium severity or the minor near misses and start to create the culture that says, let's talk about these, but don't focus on the outcomes. The outcomes are almost irrelevant when it comes to learning, because if you stop time 5 seconds, and in fact, that's one of the activities in the book, asking the question, if you stop time 5 seconds before the accident happens, all of the learning opportunities are there. You don't have to have somebody die to create a learning environment or a learning opportunity. So, and that means that we can be reflective and asking people how it made sense. And that's, going back to the debrief bit, Brock, for the prompt there as well. every dive can be a learning dive, where we reflect on what's happened in a structured manner that allows learning to carry on.
And that's, we discussed that previously, but the positive things on how hard it is once you start doing the debrief model to get people to, before doing the debrief, I did nothing wrong. And then you start using the debrief and they're like, I did nothing right. Like, no, like, yeah, there are plenty of right things. Let's talk about the right things. Just give me a thing you did right, and solidifying the correct things and finding ways to mitigate the things that need improvement. That's so important with debrief. Debrief is near miss reporting without people really realizing it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the next bit then is, that's great because now you can learn in your team from what's happened. The next step is the ability to share that learning across a wider community, because I know that there will be people on the East Coast will make mistakes that are replicated on the West Coast or down in Mexico or in Caribbean or in the UK. And it's that ability to say, how do we create that learning environment? And that starts with, I am fallible, I will make mistakes. How do I better myself so I don't make those mistakes? Which goes back to the bit that says, don't judge on outcomes, or don't focus on outcomes. Because if we focus on an outcome and we had a good outcome, but we don't look behind us and see the train wreck that's there, we think all is rosy. And when you're external, don't focus just on the negative outcomes, and that the harsher they are, that the worse we judge them. Let's look at the process to get there. So be curious. Don't forget the debrief, and be curious.
Yeah, that is massively important. We are right at our hour. So what I'm going to do is kind of say a couple of parting words to everybody. I'm going to pull you out of the stream, and then I will come back on and say goodbye to you after I say my parting words to all them. That work for you?
That works for me.
All right.
Well, thank you very much, everybody.
Yes. Thanks, everybody. Oh, wait. I don't know if you can answer this or not.
As far as I know, it closed down, and that's just from reading stuff. So yeah. In fact, I know it closed down because we drove past it.
Gotcha. Did DiveSoft, not to throw them under the bus in any way, shape, or form, but DiveSoft change any of the stuff? It might be a little bit hard with CE and everything. Did they change any of the processes to fix any of that?
The answer is I don't honestly know in terms of the timing out, but I can check and find out what that's the case. And I know, there's a thing from a point of view of, you would like the thing to time out so it doesn't waste the batteries.
Right.
So, if you're going to prep your boat and you prep your rebreather, and then you've got a long ride out on a cold day on a cold boat, and your batteries are just sitting there ticking away. Well, you can end up getting in the water with your battery just about right, and then it doesn't fire the solenoids. So, increased brightness of LEDs on the surface. There's a lot of different things that could tweak, but then you got to go through CE, and it's not a fast process by any means, I'm sure. Or cheap.
Yeah, or cheap at all. My God, it's so expensive. So, Matt Glass is another swell one. Picked up the field guide too. Appreciate all you're doing in this area of dive training. Nice. Thanks, Matt.
Cool.
All right. So I will say goodbye to you now before everybody starts chattering on. I'll say goodbye to them, and then I'll come back and just close up with you. All right.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Jason.
Thank you, Gareth. Hey guys, I just wanted to say thank you very much again for joining us. A couple of different things. If being able to do all these things for everybody, we do have Patreon. I'm posting that link in here. Any help is appreciated. And the more popular of the two is the glassware, the Adrama diving glassware. As you guys have, I think a couple of you. I think Eric and Matt both have them that are in here, and Chris Hamlick has them that's in here. These glasses here have been selling like crazy, and it's a way to show off and tell people that more than they do, I guess. Just kidding. But I want to thank everybody for their time, and any help is appreciated so we can keep doing these and expand. And like I said, there's a couple of things I'd like to do. So thank you. Share it. It's on YouTube. It's on YouTube now and on Facebook. So thanks, everybody. I really appreciate all of it. Take care, guys.